this is my review of Kaitou Joker. Okay, so in this episode, we actually learned Joker's backstory and how he actually met Silverheart. So yeah, this episode just kind of covers how Joker kind of became Joker and how he kind of came to work under Silverheart and became his apprentice. It is actually kind of interesting and a little bit sad at the same time for reasons I will get to in a minute. But in any case, it starts off with Silverheart stealing a priceless artifact from a museum. I don't really know what the artifact is called. It's a little vase thing, but it shows that despite his old age, Silverheart is more than capable of handling himself in a fight. And he proceeds to take out several of the security guards that are trying to arrest him, and knocks them out. But in any case, as he's going to go steal the vase, he actually throws out his back, and toward the end of the episode, Joker has to go and help him. I'll further explain that when I get to it. But as that's happening, Hachi is actually cleaning up Joker's room and is kind of complaining about the fact that Joker doesn't seem to keep any of his stuff clean. He points out that it's just a complete and utter mess. And that obviously if Joker had actually kept his stuff clean, then Hachi wouldn't need to go in there and keep constantly cleaning. But as he's cleaning, he actually discovers a key, at which point Joker walks in and Hachi asks him what it's for. But Joker merely takes the key and refuses to explain anything about it, pointing out that Hachi shouldn't have been going through his stuff, and Hachi merely points out that he was merely cleaning and picked it up, and points out that if Joker kept his stuff clean, he wouldn't have picked up the key to begin with. So Joker just finally relents and points out that it's fine, and then points out that it's dinner time, and Hachi just goes off to go make curry. At which point we actually see he actually places the key on the desk, and we actually see a family photo of him when he was a kid with his parents. And we actually find out and from this point onward, we actually are sent into a flashback about where he came from and what his story is. So he used to live with his parents. There's no pictures on the wiki as far as I can tell, so, and unfortunately, just make up your imagination, or if you've seen the anime, which I would recommend you do. If you've seen the anime, you probably already know what they look like. But in case it starts with Joker's dad, dad, and Joker's name is revealed to be Jack Jones in this episode. But he tells a young but his dad is actually putting a priceless artifact called the Time-Telling Goddess into his personal safe. At which point Jack walks in and he wants the key to the safe. It's revealed to be the same key that Hachi actually picked up. Before the flashback happened, obviously, but yeah, he picks up the key. Jack wants the key, and constantly asks his dad to actually give it to him. And his dad, realizing that Jack isn't going to actually give up until he has the key in his possession, then decides to make a little bit of a game out of it. And decides that if Jack can actually find the key, he will have earned the right to it. But Jack points out that he doesn't feel like that's very fair. Also, especially since he points out that obviously obviously his dad always told Jack that burglars are kind of scummy and that you shouldn't steal things. But Jack's dad merely just points out that since he already knows what it is and what he's stealing, that they should make it more into a bit of a game. Since obviously they know what the other one's after. So, and that's kind of where Jack's fascination with Phantom Thieves actually came in. So, yeah, because his dad pointed out that it's more of a game if the person knows what you're stealing. It's implied that's where he actually developed his love of Phantom Thieves. So, but in any case, with that, they actually go off to go eat dinner since it's dinner time. And his dad actually makes dinner, revealing that he actually made curry. And Jack is happy because he loves his dad's curry, but his mom is a little upset that he doesn't like his hamburger steak as much. But he points out that he loves them both equally, at which point it's revealed that the two have actually combined their dishes to be one, and it works out really well. And Jack is just happy, and he wolfs it all down. At which point they go back. Jack and his dad proceed to go back to their game. Jack constantly tries to find out where the key is and keeps getting ambushed by traps by his dad. And one such trap is that he actually wired an electrical cable into the safe so that Jack couldn't actually just get in there by brute force, and it actually does wind up defending it against burglars, which is pretty neat. But Jack is still no closer to actually finding it. So and eventually his mom and dad have to leave on a business trip. So as a final parting gift before they leave for 3 days, Jack's dad actually decides to actually leave a riddle about how to actually find the keys to actually find the key, pointing out that he's left it somewhere in the house. And Jack agrees to these terms, pointing out that once they've made that he will succeed in finding the key, and that when they get back they can have curry, which his dad agrees to make when they get back. And with that they proceed to go and leave on their trip. And while they're gone, Jack immediately gets into the riddle, which is as follows: black and white kept separate, black and red kept separate. Red and black kept separate. Put love before rock. Put the arrow before the clover. So Jack doesn't fully understand what it is at first. He's constantly kind of trying to figure it out. He looks at the note again. And while initially believing it to be the dining room table, since the dining room table, I should mention, is black and red, he eventually realizes that playing cards are black and red as well. And remembering his dad keeps them in a cabinet in the main living room, he proceeds to go and open that and discovers that his dad has actually laid out the cards, red and black kept separate. But he can't. But now that he's got realizes that now that he's got all the pieces, it's just a matter of figuring it out. And then he proceeds to spend the next several days thinking it over. But he can't actually get any closer to solving the puzzle, and realizes that at this rate his dad is eventually going to come home before he's actually able to solve the puzzle by himself. And right on point, there's a knock on the door, and Jack, believing it to be his parents, goes to go and open the door and see what's going on. Except no. As it turns out, his parents were killed in a plane crash. As it turns out, their plane actually crashed, and his parents died. So unfortunately, Jack becomes increasingly upset throughout this episode, I mentioned, because his parents died. Obviously, that's sad and depressing. But he's completely in denial about his fact that his parents are dead, pointing out that once he solves the puzzle, they'll come home. Or at least that's what he tells himself to see if they'll ever actually return. And while he constantly searches for the key and trying to figure out the puzzle. And while he's doing that, he actually does defend his house from several burglars who are attempting to break in and steal the time-telling goddess, since it's a very valuable treasure. So obviously he does successfully keep them at bay using the electrical cables that are wired into the cage. Which scare off any would-be burglars, and they then proceed to run off. But as Jack is kind of scaring off like what he remarks as the 8th burglar that week, he then sees an advance notice from Silverheart, which is how they actually meet. Silverheart comes into his house to actually steal the time-telling goddess. And sure enough, Jack goes to confront Silverheart inside in the treasure room where the time-telling goddess is actually being kept. And Jack isn't particularly happy about Silverheart being there, pointing out that he was the one who sent the advance notice, and points out that he's just a burglar, like all the others. But Silverheart merely remarks that he's actually not a burglar, and that he's actually a phantom thief. With the difference being that he gave Jack advance notice, which does turn it into more of a game, as Jack's dad told to him, and which only further influences Jack's appreciation of phantom thieves. But also points out that that obviously he needs to keep Silverheart from actually stealing the time-telling doll since it belonged to his dad. And then proceeds to reveal that the room they're in is actually laden with traps. Case in point, he opens up a pitfall, and on top of that drops a washboard on Silverheart's head and traps him in a cage. And Silverheart even points out that he clearly has some skill, but then disappears and poofs like the image gum. And it's revealed that Silverheart is actually the one who invented it. As it turns out, Silverheart's the one who invented the image gum, and that he's actually the one responsible for that gadget. And it explains why both Spade and Joker have some, since they both worked for Silverheart. They obviously have a steady supply and know how to make it. So, yeah, that kind of explains where the image gum came from. But as Silverheart gloats, pointing out that Jack will never actually be able to stop him from stealing the time-telling goddess, Jack drops another washband on his head and then proceeds to use the cables from the electrical trap to pin Silverheart to the cage and keep him there. At which point in the middle of the night, Jack hears a knock at the door while he's tying up Silverheart, and goes to the door to discover his parents, which we know are dead. So obviously it can't be them, and it isn't them. So Jack is initially very excited to see his parents again, and his parents kind of reassure him that they got a little bit sidetracked and didn't keep up with him, but that's okay, and that now they're home, but also point out that they have something that they need to see in the treasure room, and Jack needs to take them there immediately to make sure that whatever's in there is safe. But as he's taking them to the treasure room, he points out several inconsistencies that they've actually brought up. Namely that his dad promised to make him curry when he got home. His mom and also that his dad is the one who makes the curry. And finally that they know that his dad should know where the key is since he's the one who hid it. At which point his mom and dad eventually realize that the kid is too smart for his own good. And then reveal that they're actually not his mom and dad, but rather a group of thieves named Professor Clover and his sidekick Doubt. So yeah, Professor Clover is actually very interesting and is actually the main antagonist of this episode. But his main thing that he's trying to do is actually kind of steal the time-telling goddess, since as he points out, it's valuable. And he actually wants the treasure from the time-telling goddess to add to his collection, but Jack won't let them, and points out that they won't actually help him without the key. So he then proceeds to race through the house and keep them at bay so they actually can't find him. This is a case in point. He uses the television to actually make it seem like the police have actually surrounded them, which he then uses to escape while they're distracted. And after realizing what he's done, Professor Clover actually breaks the TV, and then proceeds to escape and then proceeds to notice that Jack actually escaped into the air ducts. So Professor Clover sends Doubt in after him, who is revealed to be able to shapeshift into a cat, weirdly enough, and she then proceeds to chase Jack through the air ducts and eventually wind up back in the treasure room, where it's revealed where Silverheart has actually since disappeared. And eventually Jack is cornered by Professor Clover, and Professor Clover points out that since he clearly doesn't know where the key is, he's no longer needed, and proceeds to try and go and kill him. Only for Silverheart to show up and point out that he actually has figured out the riddle. And then proceeds to make a bargain that they actually trade the time-telling goddess for the kid. And Professor Clover clearly recognizes Silverheart, pointing out that he knows who this guy is. But she then proceeds to point out that Silverheart doesn't seem like the kind of person who would actually turn down a treasure. And Silverheart merely points out that life is the most precious treasure of all, and that it should be protected at all costs. But B, Jack dropped a washburn on his head, and he's kind of still a little bit annoyed at him, so he wants to actually give him a proper reprimanding away from Professor Clover. At which point he takes him back to the living room and reveals what he's actually discovered about the whole deck of cards thing that Jack had actually figured out. And Jack even points out that he figured that out as well, but Silverheart then proceeds to explain the further points of the puzzle and how he actually solved it. as he points out, there are exactly 26 cards in a deck of cards, both black and red, which also correspond to the alphabet, which Jack is kind of impressed by. But then he goes on to explain that the way they've ordered it is that he's actually set it up so that Jack's dad actually set it up so that love comes before rock is reference to the fact that diamonds are a type of rock, and then also referencing hearts, and from that order is set with 1 through 26 being set with red, and then below is arrow before clover, which is revealed to be spade before clubs, which again is another set of 26. And after pointing that out, then concludes that the solution to the puzzle is in fact the words eternal family in Japanese. And while Jack is a little confused as to what this actually means, Silverheart then proceeds to explain that eternal means something that will last forever, and will likely never fade. And Jack figures out immediately what that means, pointing out that it's likely referring to their family portrait. And sure enough, as Jack opens up the back of the family portrait, it's just revealed that the key is actually inside. However, as he's going to actually take the key and hand it to Silverheart, Professor Clover actually grabs Jack and yanks on Jack, who is in chains for the majority of the segment, and pulls him away from Silverheart. And Jack proceeds to drop the key, and Silverheart catches it, and Silverheart merely remarks that Professor Clover is a bit of a coward, and then proceeds to open up the safe and let the actual case out. Sure enough, he then proceeds to take the time-telling goddess and actually brings it back to the center of the room to trade. And Professor Clover then proceeds to pick it up and also let Jack go. But obviously, he's not going to just let them go. So he has Doubt actually deal with them instead. And at which point Silverheart points out that that's actually a bit of a crummy tactic. And points out that he should have honored his agreements. And then he and Doubt then proceed to battle each other. With Silverheart actually grabbing a frayed part of the wire. And explaining to Jack that he needs to actually turn the power on, and Jack does exactly that. And it's revealed that Silverheart is actually used that to defend himself, because the wire is frayed. Silverheart is actually protected by Doubt. And Doubt is unable to actually touch him. At which point Professor Clover realizes that he shouldn't have left Doubt to deal with it himself, and pulls out a stun gun, which Silverheart seems to recognize. But as Professor Clover is actually about to shoot Silverheart, Silverheart merely reassures Jack, pointing out that there's still a possibility to pull off a miracle, and indeed that's exactly what happens. So because of their outfits and how they work, they're actually wearing ballistic armor, which Jack figures out when he actually goes to shoot them earlier with his little slingshot, which doesn't hurt them at all. But the consequence of that is that their ballistic armor is made of iron. So because the electrical cable is currently wrapped around the safe, Jack inadvertently created an electromagnet, and it pulls everything metal within the room toward them, including their ballistic armor. And because Professor Clover is actually holding the time-telling goddess, he actually drops it and breaks it. And shortly before he gets stuck to the armor and to the safe, and pointing out that the time-telling goddess no longer has any value to him. He and Doubt then proceed to use a smoke bomb and escape from the electromagnet. At which point Silverheart points out that they've escaped, but he does know that since it has no value anymore, they likely won't be coming back. At which point Silverheart and Jack seem like they're going to go separate and go on their merry way. With Jack even giving Silverheart the time-telling goddess as a kind of a memento of sorts, pointing out that A, he already has the key and no longer needs it, but B, Silverheart kind of effectively stole it fair and square, so he's more than deserving of it. So with that, Silverheart then proceeds to get into his plane and says that he'll actually see Jack around, but then it's revealed that Jack actually stowed aboard his plane and wants to actually be his apprentice and become a Phantom Thief. And while Silverheart is initially reluctant to the point where he points out that it's actually way too dangerous for a kid to be in a moving plane without him knowing, he eventually relents and decides that he will actually teach Jack everything he knows, pointing out that obviously Jack seems to have a bit of a knack for it, and also points out that Jack seems to be interested in that line of work anyway. So he figures why the hell not, especially since his parents are dead and likely won't and he likely will need someone to look after him regardless. So with that, he decides to tell Jack to like one last look at the night sky, because that's the life he's going to be living from now on, and that's the only sky he's going to be seeing from now on. At which point then cuts back to the present day, where again, as I explained earlier in this review, Jack or Joker now, Joker and Hachi suddenly get a call from Silverheart, and while Hachi doesn't know who it is, after explaining the situation to Joker realizes that Silverheart is actually the one calling. And after listening to his phone call, realizes that Silverheart is actually throwing his back out and needs Jack to come and go get him. So with that, Joker and Hachi then proceed to go to the museum where Silverheart actually is, and proceeds to go and pick him up. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in this episode. This episode was very backstory heavy, obviously, but it is an interesting backstory in that it explains how Jack actually became to be the Phantom Thief Joker. So it is very interesting. It explains how he came to actually start working under Silverheart. It introduces Professor Clover and his sidekick Doubt, who are interesting, and I'm interested to see what their story is, since they're actually featured prominently in the OP. So I'm a little interested to see who they are and what their story actually is. I'm interested to see what their deal is and why they're kind of stealing treasures, because they feel like they kind of fit the whole Phantom Thief thing where everybody's named after playing cards, but they're not Phantom Thieves. They're just straight up burglars who will kill and kill people if necessary. So it is very interesting, and am interested to see what their story is. But for right now, that's my review of Kaitou Joker. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks on my way saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then you can check out my Twitch down in the description below as well. I stream every Sunday, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, schedule permitting. So if you guys want to see those, unless something comes up, I will be streaming every Sunday. So be sure to go check those out. And the other way you can do that is by checking out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!